In chapter number 2, reproduction in lower and higher animals, under this chapter, today we learn about the menstrual cycle. Today we learn about the menstrual cycle. Before going toward that menstrual cycle, we learn that are the terms with respect to female reproductive system. Some terms related to the female reproductive system, that is the menarche. Menarche means what? Menarche means it is the first beginning of menstrual cycle. Generally, it begins at the age of 10 to 14 years age. The beginning of menstrual cycle is called as the menarche. Menarche means it is the first menstrual cycle that begins at the age of 10 to 14 years age. That is called as the menarche. Second is the menopause. Menopause means cessation of menstrual cycle or going of the menstrual cycle. It is called as the menopause. Generally it occurs at the age of 45 to 15 years age in case of the females. And this menarche starts at 10 to 14 years. That age may be varies. Girls to girls theirs. Beginning of menstrual cycle is called as the menarche, and going of the menstrual cycle or temporarily cease, permanently stopping the menstrual cycle, that is called as the menopause. And that condition is occurred at the age of 45 to 15 years age. 45 to 50 years age. Then the reproductive age. What is meant by reproductive age? The reproductive age means the age which is present between menarche and menopause. The age which is present between menarche and menopause is called as the reproductive age. Generally, in case of the female, that reproductive age that will be calculated from 14 years to 15 years, that is the about 32 years age. That is the reproductive age. And in this reproductive age, near about 416 eggs are discharged or released by the process of ovulation. How these 416 eggs, that number will be approximately calculated. That means the duration of menstrual cycle is the 28 days duration, and in 1 year there are 13 menstrual cycles are created. 13 multiplied by 32, that means near about 416 eggs are formation takes place in this reproductive age. That age is called as the reproductive age. That next, that is the puberty. Puberty means what? Puberty means that the age, in that age the sex organs become functional. The puberty is the age. In this age the sex organs become functional. That means they starts formation, the reproductive system will become functional. They starts formation of the gametes and sex hormones are formation takes place there. That is called as the puberty. And this puberty age will be occurs at the age of 12 to 14 years age. This puberty starts at the age of 12 to 15 years age. In this age, puberty period will be created. These terms are related to the female reproductive system, that are the menarche, menopause, reproductive age and puberty. Then we turn toward the menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle means the cyclic changes occurs in the ovary. The cyclic changes occurs in the ovary and female reproductive tracts, mainly in uterus, is called as the menstrual cycle. The cyclic changes occurs in the ovary and female reproductive tract, mainly in the uterus, is called as the menstrual cycle. This menstrual cycle occurs under the influence of gonadotropin and ovarian hormones respectively. Gonadotropin and ovarian hormones respectively. The period of this the duration of the menstrual cycle, periodicity of menstrual cycle, the duration of menstrual cycle is approximately 28 days. This is the duration of the menstrual cycle. And the hormones which play important role in the menstrual cycle, they are the progesterone, estrogen, LH, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormones. These hormones play important role in the regulation of this menstrual cycle. This menstrual cycle starts at the age menarche and stopping of the menstrual cycle at the age of menopause. That condition is called as the menopause, and this menstrual cycle is divided into 4 stages. This menstrual cycle is divided into 4 stages, that are the menstrual phase, proliferative phase, ovulatory phase, and secretory phase and luteal phase. Secretory phase, or it is also called as the luteal phase here. First we learn about the menstrual phase. The menstrual phase means the beginning of first day, that is the bleeding through vagina is the indication of beginning of menstrual cycle. In this phase is last up to first to 5 days. This phase is last up to first day to 5th days. 5 days duration of this menstrual phase. During this phase, near about 45 to 100 ml blood is discharged in the form of menses. 45 to 100 ml blood is discharged in the form of menses, and the menses which is discharged, it does not clot due to presence of fibrinolysin. Due to presence of fibrinolysin, it does not clot with that menses which is discharged there. The menstrual cycle generally occurs if egg is not fertilized there. If egg is not fertilized, then unfertilized eggs, remaining materials are eliminated outside in the form of menses. And this menstrual cycle is also described as the funeral of unfertilized egg. It is also described as the funeral of unfertilized egg. The next is the proliferative phase. Next is the before going toward the proliferative phase, we are learn about which changes are takes place in the ovary. Changes in ovary and changes in uterus. Changes in uterus. Which changes are takes place during this first 5 days? Changes in the ovary and changes in the uterus there. Changes in the ovary and changes in the uterus. Which changes are takes place there? In the uterus, the endometrium wall will breaks in the uterus. The changes in the uterus, endometrium walls will breaks there. Endometrium walls will breaks there. In the uterus, there are the endometrial walls are breaks there. Changes in the uterus and changes in the ovary. These two concepts are related with the menstrual phase. In the menstrual phase, changes in the uterus. In the uterus, during this first to 5th days, the endometrial wall will breaks under the influence of hormone prostaglandin. The endometrial wall breaks the hormone under the influence of hormone prostaglandin. This hormone is secreted due to decreasing the level of estrogen and progesterone there. Under the influence of prostaglandin, the inner endometrial walls breaks there in the uterus there, and the wall become thin, that is measures about 1 mm in length. That wall becomes thin, that measures about the 1 mm in thickness, and the unfertilized egg breaking the endometrial wall and blood vessels all are eliminated. Mucous materials all are eliminated in the form of menses in this menstrual phase there. Then during this menstrual phase, which changes are occurs in the ovary? Which changes are occurs in the ovary there? That means there are the many primordial follicles are present there, and out of that many primordial follicles, that primordial follicle become primary follicles, and the primary follicles, few of that primary follicles develops into the secondary oocyte there. Few of the primary follicle develops into the secondary oocyte there. Then we turn toward the next phase, that is the proliferative phase. That is the next phase, that is the proliferative phase. Proliferative phase. In the proliferative phase, this is the variable phase among these 4 phases. This is the variable phase among the 4 phases there's the duration of this phase is start from 5th day to the 13th day of menstrual cycle. This is the variable phase there's the duration of this phase is starts from 5th to 13th day of 13th day in that menstrual cycle there's. What happens here in the uterus, what happens in this phase there's, that means here changes in the ovary and changes in the uterus there's, that means in the ovary the secondary follicles which will be formed here, the secondary follicles which are proceed near about 1 to 7 secondary oocytes which are formed, which are proceeds for further development. Out of that 1 to 7 secondary oocytes, only one secondary oocytes matures and it develops into the Graafian follicle. It develops into the Graafian follicle, and that Graafian follicle itself secrete the hormone estrogen. Itself secrete the hormone estrogen there's. The Graafian follicle itself secrete the hormone estrogen there's. Then changes in the uterus. Changes in the uterus there's. In the uterus, the rupture materials of endometrium walls, their repairment of the wall of endometrium will start there's. Breakdown endometrium walls in the menstrual phase, there is the repairment of endometrial wall will be formation takes place there's, and the repairment, that means in menstrual phase endometrial wall become 1 mm in thickness. Here it will become 3 to 5 mm in thickness. The endometrial wall will be repairment will be takes place there, and along with the endometrial walls, network of blood capillaries, network of the blood capillaries, then network of the blood capillaries are also starts repairment in inner wall of the endometrium will repairment will be starts in the uterus there's. In the uterus there's, under the influence of hormone estrogen, there is the repairment of the endometrial wall will take place at the 13th day of menstrual cycle, and mature follicular Graafian follicle will be formation takes place there. Uterine glands become become glandular and vascular in the proliferative phase. The next third is the ovulatory phase. This ovulatory phase is the short phase which takes place at the 14th day of menstrual cycle. 14th day of menstrual cycle. What happens here? The mature Graafian follicle, ruptured follicle will be released from the ovary into the pelvic cavity of the abdominal cavity. In the pelvic cavity, that release of the egg or ova from the matured follicular Graafian follicle, and that that process is called as the ovulation, and it is occurred at the 14th day of menstrual cycle. It occurs at the 14th day of menstrual cycle years, and the rupture of Graafian follicle or mature follicle is done under the influence of LH hormone, luteinizing hormone, which is formed by the positive feedback mechanism. It will be formed by the mature follicle will be ruptured, and formation of ovulation will be takes place, and egg will be released, and that is dropped into the pelvic cavity generally, and that will be accomplished by the pains in the lower abdominal parts at that time in the female. That will be our slightly elevation of temperature will takes place at the 14th day of menstrual cycle there. Then next phase, that is the secretory phase, or it is called as the luteal phase. Secretory phase or luteal phase there. This phase starts from 15th day to the 28th day. That means the last 28th day. The duration is about 14th day. It is the longest duration of the secretory phase here. It is the longest duration of the, it is the fourth phase in the menstrual cycle there. It will be start from 15th day to 28th day, last menstrual cycles day. That duration will be extend up to the 14th day. The duration will be extend up to the 14th day. There are changes in the ovary and changes in the ovary. Which changes are takes place? Changes in the ovary. In the ovary, changes in the ovary and changes in the uterus. In this phase, changes in the ovary and changes in the uterus. That means the secondary oocyte which is released, in the 14th day of menstrual cycle, that process is called as the ovulation, and the empty follicle, Graafian follicle will be present there. That empty follicle is act as the carpus luteum. That act as the carpus luteum. If process of fertilization will be takes place there, carpus luteum remains as it is. It secretes the hormone progesterone. It will maintain the pregnancy period there. If process of fertilization will not take place, carpus luteum is degenerate. It not survive more than 2 weeks there. It degenerate into white scar. That is called as the carpus albicans. That is called as the carpus albicans there. That is called as the carpus albicans there. And in case of fertilization, if the fertilization process will be takes place there, what happen there, implantation of the fertilized egg will take place in the uterus there, and to further developmental changes are takes place. That means the inner wall of the endometrium become more vascular and glandular there. There will be the thickness of the endometrium will be forms near about 8 to 10 millimeter, 8 to 10 mm in thickness will be formation takes place, and under the influence of FSH, the hormones which will be secreted there, the implantation of the embryo will be takes place here, and the secretion of human chorionic gonadotropic hormone HCG, secretion of human, when after the implantation of embryo there will be implantation of the embryo, there is the human chorionic gonadotropic hormone will be secreted there. This HCG hormone, presence of HCG hormone in urine and blood of the maternal blood, that is indication of the conception of pregnancy. That is indication of conception of pregnancy there. This HCG secretes the small amount of estrogen. This HCG will be secrete, which extent this HCG will secrete the this HCG will maintain the pregnancy, and this human chorionic gonadotropic hormone will extend the life of corpus luteum, and the corpus luteum further secrete the hormone progesterones, and it will be maintain the development of the further development of the fetus. For that purpose, this HCG hormone is the important there. If the process of fertilization will take place there, inner wall of the uterus become more vascular and glandular in nature, increase in the thickness, and there will be the lodging will be prepared for the implantation of the embryo and further development of the pregnancy. For that period, preparations are takes place in there. If process of fertilization will be not, and at that time inhibin hormone will stop the secretion of FSH there. If fertilization process will be not takes place, then again the first study of menstrual cycle will be started. That means the bleeding through vagina is the indication of menstrual cycle. That means the cycle will be repeated, and the duration of the cycle is the 28 days durations, and that will be divided into these 4 phases, that are the menstrual phase, proliferative phase, ovulatory phase, and secretory phase. In board question paper, they are asking the question related to the describe the menstrual cycle. There's sometimes they are also asking what is meant by menarche, what is meant by menopause, what is meant by reproductive age, what is meant by puberty. These terms are also important related to the 1 mark questions there.